So back in 2013, I graduated with what might be the only Bachelor's of Science degree in mandolin music performance ever. And today I want to talk about whether or not this was actually worth it. If you're new here to the channel, my name is David. I've been playing and teaching mandolin for over 20 years now, and this degree is actually a big part of my experience, even though I haven't talked a lot about it here on the channel. So today I want to dig into all those details, share the whole experience from what it was like to apply for a degree that doesn't really exist, to my custom course curriculum, to the pros and cons of the program I attended, and whether or not I would recommend this to other people in similar situations. This is really a video that I wish was around when I was looking at college, and I hope that it helps other people out and just contributes to this conversation of mandolin academia that still is not that common today. So I hear this a lot from prospective students. How do I know that a music degree is right for me? In particular, a mandolin degree. And while that's different for every person, let me share a bit about my story just to give you some insight. I was kind of a late bloomer when it came to music. I'd just gotten a mandolin when I was 13 years old, and there weren't a whole lot of mandolin instructors nearby, so I just took a few lessons from guitar players and violin players and kind of remained stagnant in growth until later on in high school when I really caught the bug for playing with other people. There was a great local Irish band that I was a part of. I joined local singer-songwriters, and at the same time, it was kind of the beginning of the YouTube era when all of a sudden I had access to videos of these amazing players like Sierra Hull and Chris Thiele and Mike Marshall, folks who were really pushing the envelope of what the mandolin can do. You know, they weren't just playing bluegrass, they're playing Bach and Choro music and all these amazing original compositions that were unlike anything that I'd ever heard, and I just wanted to be exactly like them. And looking back now, even though I was practicing a lot and so motivated to get better, I was still a beginner in so many ways. I knew nothing about music theory. I could hardly read standard notation, even though I was trying to play Bach from a few tabs I'd found online. And I'd never even been to a bluegrass jam or a bluegrass festival, so I had no idea how that music worked. And it's kind of surprising to me now that this idea popped into my head that I wanted to major in music. And I'm sure it was even more surprising to my parents when I sat them down and told them that. And honestly, it took some convincing. They were pretty concerned at first, thought that I should probably major in something like business and get a music minor, but they were open to the idea. And what was so helpful was that they found me these opportunities in high school to get my feet wet in music to see if this was something that I really excelled at or not. So I started to take a local college course on music theory, which I ended up loving. And then the church we went to, I started to do a music internship there where I got more experience leading and arranging music. And then there were just so many more opportunities that kept popping up to collaborate with local artists and get more performance experience. So by the time college application season came around, I think they realized how serious I was and how that we should probably find some options for this degree that doesn't really exist. So what options do we mandolin players have when it comes to academic programs here in the States? Let me tell you, not that many. And it was only years later that I realized that there actually are some reputable programs for mandolin overseas, like the Music Conservatory in Cologne, Germany, where Katharina Lichtenberg teaches classical mandolin. But I wasn't even aware of that subculture in the mandolin world, or even the beautiful repertoire that was written for the instrument back in the day. And realistically, I probably wouldn't have been able to afford to study abroad like that. Otherwise, here in the States, to my knowledge, there's still just two established programs for mandolin players. The first being the Berklee College of Music up in Boston with their American Roots Strings program, which was really just kicking off at the time I was looking at schools. And it was an exciting time to be there because Sierra Hull was studying there, Dominic Leslie, Jacob Jolliffe, all these amazing artists. I was really excited about the possibility of going there, but as soon as we started to look into the details, we quickly realized that it just wouldn't have been feasible because the tuition there is astronomical. And like I said, me being such a beginner at the time, there really wasn't any chance of me earning academic scholarship to offset that cost. So sadly, we had to put that option by the wayside. So the second and really only other option for a mandolin degree here is the ETSU Appalachian Studies program, where you can go and specifically get a degree in bluegrass mandolin, which is honestly pretty cool. And at the time, they had Adam Steffi there as their main mandolin instructor, who I didn't know much about back then, but since has become one of my biggest mandolin heroes. So they had a lot going on for them, and it was a much more affordable program. So I actually applied and went to audition. My audition was kind of funny. It was just a duo jam with a department head. But like I said, I had never really been to a bluegrass jam before, so I didn't realize you were supposed to trade back and forth. So second time around the tune, I just kept playing the melody because I didn't even know the chords, and it was kind of an embarrassing situation. But They still let me in, surprisingly. At the time, I wasn't as interested in bluegrass as I am now, so I wanted to seek out a few other options first. So after that, we ended up just going rogue, where me and my parents sat down and emailed a bunch of different music department heads at different schools to see if they would be willing to accommodate me with the mandolin as my main instrument. And with the varied responses that we got back, I also ended up applying to Clemson University that were open to me using the mandolin in their composition track, to the College of Charleston that were open to me doing the jazz program with the mandolin, and then also to Montreat College and Bryan College, which were two liberal arts schools that were small enough to allow me to kind of custom design my own course. The real ironic thing is that the first email we got back from Bryan College, the department head said, I'm not too sure about this. We don't have too many ukulele players around here. And despite that shaky start, that's where I ended up going. Just the way that the scholarships panned out and the freedom that they offered me to basically do a traditional music degree where I subbed out the violin for a mandolin. So, nuts and bolts, my music degree ended up being a very standard classical music degree with a few exceptions. So I ended up taking 4 semesters of music theory and ear training, 4 semesters of classical music history, 4 semesters of piano proficiency even, and I ended up taking pretty much every other course offering that the music department had. So conducting, orchestration, I sang in the school choir, I played in a violin quartet where I ended up just reading one of the violin parts on the mandolin. All sorts of stuff like that. But there was some different stuff too. Like one of the ensembles I got school credit for was this trio of friends who went to school, one who played guitar, one who played fiddle, and we played bluegrass and swing music for different school events throughout the year. And also there was some independent study where basically I just met with my advisor once a month where we talked about things like mandolin repertoire, where I compiled a list of some of the most popular pieces for mandolin in different genres, or mandolin pedagogy, where I studied and analyzed different method books for teaching this instrument to different people. I also had the freedom to take some one-on-one lessons with different teachers. So twice a month, I met with a classical violinist and learned violin repertoire on the mandolin, mostly Baroque stuff like Bach and Vivaldi. And then on the in-between weeks, I would take online mandolin lessons. And firstly, I went through the Artist Works Academy with Mike Marshall, which is awesome in hindsight that I got college credit for doing that. And it's a great program. And Mike has been so supportive over the years since then. And then later on, I also took lessons from Matt Flinner, who really opened up my eyes to all things mandolin. He introduced me to David Grisman's music, John Reichman, Sam Bush, and just got me going on a variety of different styles, which I'm so thankful for. But maybe the best thing about my college experience was that once the staff saw how motivated I was as a student, they actually gave me my own dedicated practice room with lock and key. And I basically just shut myself away for hours a day working on whatever I wanted to work on, which was so important for the odd and kind of numerous performance opportunities I ended up having as the only mandolin player at this school. That fall semester I started, the school hired an orchestra for their fall concert, and I got to play the Vivaldi Mandolin Concerto, which was my first experience playing with an orchestra like that. Later on, that trio I played in school, through a number of weird circumstances, got to open up for Bela Fleck at the Symphony Orchestra in Chattanooga before Bela played his banjo concerto. And then later on, my junior and senior recitals, I just had the freedom to pick whatever music I wanted to do, whether it be like bluegrass and Celtic music, swing and jazz, or classical. It was just a smorgasbord of my favorite music, and getting to play it with a lot of friends was so fun. Well, let's get down to the pros and cons, because there's a lot of both, and some things I might have wanted to do differently looking back now. The biggest pro that kind of all these stem from was, I think, being kind of a bigger fish in a small pond, if you will. Bryan College was tiny. It was 800 students altogether, and the music department was a fraction of that, like maybe 80 altogether. So that teacher to student ratio offered me a lot of kind of cool opportunities and offered me a lot of the freedom that I was talking about earlier to design my own program. Also, I didn't realize it at the time, but having that dedicated practice room was a huge thing for me, just to have this safe place to call my own, to figure out what I wanted to do, what I wanted to play. I know I could have had that at home in my bedroom, but having that in an academic space was pretty special. And then also there were some skills that I learned at school specifically, things like how to use notation software, things that I use today through my Patreon page. And then also studying with Mike Marshall and Matt Flinner. I couldn't have asked for better mandolin instructors, and the inspiration that I got from them back then is still kind of carrying me on today. Also, some of the unique extracurriculars that I was able to do was really cool. Like my teachers were okay with me taking some time off to go to music festivals like IBMA and Merle Fest, and then taking time off to go record my first album with some other students who were interested in working with me, as well as, working with students who were into video production and sound design, things that got me interested in what I do today through YouTube. But maybe the most important pro was that it was an affordable option for me compared to Berklee or other music schools where I'd still be paying off my debt, which is kind of crazy. As a mandolin player, we need all the help we can get. But there definitely were some cons as well. And primarily, I think being in such a small school, while it did afford those unique opportunities, kind of offered this vacuum of musical community where there weren't a whole lot of other musicians, especially musicians who were interested in the same music that I was, to learn from and to play with and be inspired by. Along with that came kind of a lack of healthy competition where I didn't have other mandolin players to compare myself to, which is maybe good in some ways, but I feel like I would have been pushed to get better faster had I been surrounded by this vibrant musical community. And a lot of the classes I took ended up being kind of irrelevant for what I do today. And I wish there had been more course offerings on things like improvisation or studio recording or video production, things that I feel like are really useful to musicians in the current age. And just being in this weird zone where I was creating my own program, felt like I had a bit of an identity crisis, especially around some of the staff who just didn't really know what to do with me. I remember in one of our annual juries where I had to perform what I was working on for the whole music staff, one of them, after I played, just said, "Yeah, it sounds good to me, I guess. I don't really know what a mandolin's supposed to sound like," which was definitely disheartening some of the time, but also kind of nice that I didn't have to deal with a lot of the judgmental attitudes that some music schools have. And not being at a big music school, I feel like I missed out on the built-in network of connections that you get with other students and with teachers. That just wasn't the case for me. I kind of had to start from square one after graduating, which is what it is. But with all that in mind, was this mandolin degree worth it? And I will say that no gig or job I've ever had has ever asked to see my diploma. In fact, I recently realized that I had lost my diploma and I had to reorder this for this very video here. What college was for me was really just a safe place for me to put in those thousands of hours to figure out what I wanted to do in music, even though I'm still figuring that out today. It also just gave me some validation to realize, yeah, the mandolin is a legit instrument and it should be recognized by academia, and it's not an impossible or absurd thing to get a degree in music with the mandolin. And most importantly, I think it just gave me a level of discipline and commitment that I didn't have otherwise, just to follow through with the studies, with the classes and the recitals, and to realize that if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish a lot, which is such an important thing as a musician. The big downside of my experience just being the lack of community that you might get at some place like ETSU or Berklee. So overall, yes, it was worth it, but not for a piece of paper, really for an experience, to get experience in this field. But for many, I understand that's not necessary. Like if you grow up playing this music from an early age, if you go to festivals regularly, if you have jams that you go to, bands that you play in, you're probably gonna be a lot farther along than me, and you may not need a music degree to blaze that path. In fact, I think a better education for me was after getting this experience in college was moving to Nashville and playing with all the amazing musicians there, and then later moving to Boston and getting to kind of be in that Berklee community without actually going to school there. And now there's so many options for learning online as well. I hope that there'll continue to be more mandolin content creators, more online course offerings for mandolin players, because the more, the better, and the stronger that we are together here. That's my story, and would I do it again? Probably so, but that doesn't stop me from often wondering what it would have been like if I'd gone to a different school, or if I just moved to Nashville earlier and studied with musicians over there. And these are all things that you can't really know or can't go back and change. And for prospective students, I know it's very overwhelming thinking about all these details. And my biggest piece of advice is just to make sure going into it that you love, love, love the mandolin, because whatever extra hassle you have to do to blaze your own path in academia with the mandolin, that's gonna be the thing that carries you through most of all. And then just trying to surround yourself with as many amazing musicians as possible, like going to a school where you can study with someone like Matt Flinner or Adam Steffi or Joe K. Walsh up at Berkeley. It's gonna make a big difference. But what do you think? Is a music degree in general, much less a mandolin degree, actually worth it in today's world? And if you could design your own mandolin path, what would you want included in your curriculum? Please let me know down in the comments below. While you're down there, please like and subscribe and stick around for other videos that you see here on screen for more mandolin content. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.